I mean, at a point in time, he was one of the best, if not the best, of StarCraft 2 players for a while. He was definitely one of those old school names I think a lot of the Wings of Liberty fans and Heart of the Swarm fans will definitely recognize.
Dude, I mean, I kind of have a bit of a chip on my shoulder, honestly, as a mech fan, because Innovation was bringing mech back, and that was when DRG just stomped him and got to the top 8, top 4, top 8 of GSL. He was like, oh no, Mute has beat mech, lol. You know, it was so classic DRG. You just swarm over mech with the Zerglings and Mutalisks and overrun it there. And it's been very cool to see DRG in the last couple of years climb back up, and he's made a lot of like quarterfinals, really high runs in the GSL, and it was something where for a few years people were saying players coming back from the military really just can't get back to the same level. It's too hard, that the skill has gone up too much. DRG was kind of, I think, one of the first guys to say, no, that's not the case at all. And obviously guys like Beyond and so on following in those footsteps, Hero coming back recently looking great. It's very cool to see him show that he can bounce back so quickly.
I'm so glad you brought it up too, because Dongragu really was one of the first players who actually showcased that, because we had seen some players come back, and honestly, not everyone really did have the same level of success of returning to form as a top-notch competitor, not just, you know, a good competitor. Dongragu is actually able to make those really deep runs in the tournaments you were talking about and everything, but I, again, am also interested to see how DRG is going to play this out, because you mentioned it before. In the past, he really did love going for that Mutiling Bling style, making a lot happen and everything, and that's also what he did versus Spirit in the past couple of times they've been playing against each other. I want to know, is he going to adapt? Is he going to change it up a little bit against Spirit's play style?
You know, it's crazy because I've seen him play Lurkers. I've seen him do a few different styles, DRG. I don't know if going too late into the game, you know, obviously it's like, hey, Lurkers, you're going to have a moment in the game, but you're going to have a lot of urgency to get stuff done. Because if you let Spirit get 10, 15 ghosts out on the field, oh, that's not a situation you want to be in as DRG. DRG likes movement. He likes to be kind of pulling his opponent around out of position. The moment you get to a maxed out situation in StarCraft, it's an entirely different skill set. It's one where Maru, obviously such an exceptional champion, his superpower is being the best in the world at that point in the game, where the game just slows down. It's about real precision over speed. DRG, I mean, he's precise compared to me or you or most of the people watching, but he's more of a fast-paced momentum movement guy, so he does not want to get to the late game.
All right, well, the First Reaper is doing its little poke arounds here and there to see what it can find, but behind all this, Spirit is already adding on that third CC, he's adding on a couple of those Hellions, getting up that starport, and I think another thing that he did find a lot of success with in the TSL was some of those Banshee openings. He's able to get some good control, but I will say one thing that was notable about, I feel like, Spirit's style of using the Hellions and everything was he's pretty passive with them. He is not one of the more aggressive Terran players out there with his Hellions or his Banshees. Kind of looks for some of the free damage, but is more than content to just kind of sit back, keep those units alive, and just keep a present threat on the map.
And yet, he's so aware of the fact that people like to all in him as a defensive guy that Reaper has not left the main base in the last 2 minutes, Ravi. It's been insane. It's just, and he's checked and he's seen 4 minutes DRG put back on gas, and that's very late in the game. He knows that DRG does not have a lot of gas to make Banelings, Ravagers, or a fast lair. Basically, DRG is locked into, I'm building a ton of Queens, a lot of drones, Zerglings to defend, and I would not be surprised to see a very quick 4th base go down for DRG.
Yeah, another thing actually Hearthstone was telling me earlier on, right before this game was getting started, was that it does seem like Spirit has been actually taking some notes from Lambo. Lambo's actually got some like cheeky Terran builds that he's been recommending, and Spirit has apparently had a lot of success versus the Korean Zerg players with him. It's I think depending on when you see the +1 weapons and +1 armor coming out for the engineering bay, if he ends up delaying that, adding on a couple of those barracks a little bit faster, going for this big 5 rack push after getting also the 3rd CC, he's able to find a lot of success with that. I think he's adding on 2 more barracks right now. I'm not quite sure what the barracks count is at, but definitely going to be on the lookout to see if he's going to try and bust out some of those moves.
Wow, that Liberator not finding any success. It's just going to have to hide in the back, wait till he's distracted. Hellions and Reapers try to get that distraction going, but 4 Queens standing in front of them, replacing those creep tumors. The Liberator does find its way into the natural. DRG, yeah, he's on point so far. Losing a few tumors is not a big issue. He's built a large Queen count, has a very quick double upgrades going, so he's got the lead there. And a Zergling run by, finding the fresh mules.
That is a really, really nice snag. One of the mules is going to be able to survive. The second mule somehow getting a little bit of a free bypass over there, is able to stay alive, continue on mining, but man, Dongragu is doing such a great job with the multi-prong harass and defense.
Ooh. Yeah, Hellions, I think, going to have to move away from this angle because DRG's just shut that one down, not really letting anything happen there. Does take the 4th base on the front. Now, that's interesting. 4th base on the front, that's kind of towards the Terran player. It tells you you want to be winning the front on fights as DRG. So he's really going to focus on his creep spread, spreading forward beyond this sight blocker, getting to the middle of the map. And it also tells me he might be focusing on more of a lurker style, because if you're playing Mutalisks, you're more likely to be expanding along those edges of the map and always be pulling away from your opponent's push, because with a Mutaling Bane style, it's all about the backstabs and the counterattacks.
Definitely going to be interesting to see how Spirit's going to try and deal with that, as his army is kind of starting to get geared up. He's adding on some more of those siege tanks. 1-1, of course, only about halfway finished up, so there's still a bit of time before Spirit's army is going to really have that big firepower and that staying power to do the big pushes. But he is moving out right now alongside some of those medevacs to try and get set up to try and complement some of those Hellions he has at the front lines. He unloads one of those siege tanks from the medevac in an advantageous position, and he can really put the pressure on this 4th base, just because it's effectively a really difficult base to defend if the siege tanks are sieged up on the low ground like this.
The Lings are looking for the flank. He's not going for the run by. That's a cool idea. If he can get those Lings on these tanks from behind, it might be able for DRG to surround this.
Big surround comes on, and the Baileys get target fire down, but one of them does get off on some of those Hellions. It is a full cleanup. The siege tank unsieges, will get picked up in time. Barely saved, but still a very, very costly trade there for Spirit.
Oh, no, don't be dropping up there. Whoa. Does save the tank. Does save the tank, at least the most important unit, but DRG now says, I am clean, in control, and this tank not really distracting. Going to be going up to 85 workers, potentially even 90 workers, and we haven't really seen a next step, so I'm expecting that infestation pit to be going down momentarily. But DRG, he can always just make a 200 supply Ling Bane and just smash it in with 2-2. I mean, that's going to be a good timing. They are ahead of the upgrades of Spirit, and if you've already lost a few of your important units, it'll be hard to defend.
Yeah, the armory got started up only kind of in the middle of that fight, so the 2-2 upgrades got a little bit delayed there for Spirit. You can see just in even the army supplies, Dongrigu has a fair amount of army and has 87 workers. He has the ability to just focus on continuing to get up upgrades, getting his next transitionary tech up, like you were saying, while using his existing army to put the pressure on. Nice target fire on the Baneling, does manage to snipe that off and is being effective with these Marines out on the map. But if he loses any more of his army, he will really be in a lot of trouble soon.
Where's our medevac, man?
There's no escape.
Oh, there it is. It got stuck behind 4th Command Center. We'll have to cancel that planetary morph. Fresh mules get found again. And Spirit definitely on the back foot right now. Down 40 supply, double drop. Going to try and buy him a bit of a moment. DRG's infestation pit's very late, but he's way ahead in supply. DRG needs to not get distracted by this, because he's got to be trading with Spirit right now. He has a massive army advantage. DRG needs to go fight him. This is a very successful drop. It's pulling DRG back and gets the spawning pool.
That's going to delay some of those additional Lings popping on out. And like you mentioned, it pulled all of Dongregu's army back. And now another couple of these drops are going to pull this army back over to his main base yet again, just as Dongregu is getting out to the left-hand side. And Spirit this time is going to be pairing this up with another attack on the left-hand side. This medevac drop in the main base looks like it will get cleaned up, but on the left-hand side, Spirit is getting deflected.
I mean, that's fine. Getting deflected is fine as long as DRG isn't killing him. Because right now, DRG has 2-2 kicking in. He's got a big army, though the army supply is getting closer, and he hasn't found a way to trade yet. You can see, look how eager he is. He's streaming in a bit of a disorganized fashion, and look at how locked down Spirit is. He's desperately got to try and hold on against this push.
Very interesting engagement here. Dongrigu comes running in with the Banelings over toward that low ground base. The Banelings on the right-hand side just buying time versus the Marines, but the SCVs, the mineral line gets absolutely wiped out. Are there enough SCVs to repair this command center? Yes, he keeps just enough alive, keeps the command center alive, but definitely has his SCV count neutered.
That's a great trade for Spirit, though. As bad as it looks when you lose 17 workers, you've got a 4th up, you're building a 5th, you're dropping mules, you've got 70 SCVs, and look how quick he rebuilds. Spirit, his goal is to be on that 85 workers so that he can absorb a punch like that, bounce right back. And remember, a lot of Banelings went down. Those are single-use units. If we take a look at the units lost tab after that fight, it will tell us a story of Zerg inefficiency, as you can see there. Does kill a bunch of the SCVs, some buildings and so on, but 40 Banelings and a lot of Zerglings, and now DRG is going up into that lurker hive tech.
Yeah, that's going to be the big transition point that Dongrigu is going to need a little bit of time to make work and happen over here, but Medevac's not able to pick up every single one of those bio units, so does have to let a few of them drop down. Love the continued harassment attempts here from Spirit. Even if a lot of these have not worked out, Sometimes you'll eventually find a couple of drones here and there with these things, and then again, it's just taxing DRG. You made a great point before about just giving himself space, right? That's what he's doing. He's giving himself space to get up more bases, to get up a better setup for the defense.
And that queen, she ain't getting out of there. She will go down, but more queens coming in as well. Spore Crawlers and the Liberator, they're not going to do too much. At this point, losing a few queens is kind of okay for DRG. You almost, I would say, want to, but he's building more queens. The reason is, of course, queens have very low damage. They're good for tanking. They don't do much else, though, and they chew up a lot of your supplies. So definitely something you got to be careful about as those Liberators continue to be a nuisance. Triple drop as well. Spirit says, if I move my army through the middle of the map, I could lose it and die. But if I just use flying units and drops, I can just keep my tank siege at home and be so annoying.
There really hasn't been that much of an anti-air reaction from DRG so far. It really has just been getting the Lings and Banelings in position. He is going to be able to snag a couple of these battle forces, but look at that beautiful spread out over there from the medevac, taking care of so many of these Banelings at the same time he pushes forward on the creep, kills off a couple of those creep tumors, killing off 13 workers, killing off even more. Focus firing down the Lurker Den before the upgrades finish up. That's going to be a huge setback as it just gets restarted. Dongre taking some big blows over here.
Are we leaving the period of the game where DRG is strongest? We just might be. It's only 12 minutes, but I'm telling you, Spirit races to the late game, and he's already got 3-3 and Ghost production in the way, even though he doesn't take out that base. 14 drones are going down. He's leading DRG around the map on a merry, a merry chase around this map. Look at that, he drops, he gets it!
Oh my god, 26 hit points. Just barely survives, and the Hydras are now out as well, so they can at least keep that base alive for a little bit longer against the medevac drops. And I'm sure he's going to be looking for any Queen Transfuse energy he can afford in the near future. But Spirit has effectively been pushed back now. The question is, did he do enough damage? Did he buy enough time? He is still down in supply, and a lot of that is still army right now.
Traded a lot of army in those last few stages. That was definitely good trades for DRG, who's got a huge amount of money. And one of the big questions is, will there be enough scans when these lurkers push in, and can they hold the angles? Because you're spread across so many bases here as Spirit, you don't know where DRG is going to hit. And it might start as a bad trade for DRG, but if he cracks the line and the other tanks and ghosts aren't quick enough to reposition, the Terran player can just fall apart. You know, you don't have enough scans to reveal the lurkers, or suddenly there's Lings with adrenal glands and +3 up in your SCV lines. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So we're still in this mode where DRG wants to crack him. Spirit just wants to turtle up. He wants to pull up his armor.
Oh boy, here we go. DRG is going to try and bust on in over here. The orbital command immediately lifts up. There's a second little run by on the right-hand side. Doesn't get the planetary, though. The save with the repair and also the deflection on the left-hand side. Again, costly trades for DRG as we end up seeing Spirit hangs on and is definitely going to be happy with how things choke out.
Yeah, that's real good there for Spirit, keeping those command centers alive. He's cleared up the bottom right as well. That's probably the weak point. I'd love to see DRG just quickly rotate to that right side of the map with this whole army, and then maybe just do more Ling run bys on the left, because the left is just an orbital, it's not a planetary. So that's actually the most vulnerable side, where you can send a small number of units. This is the side where he needs a lot of units to crack through. He doesn't have Banelings ready. This is an ambitious push.
This is an awkward kind of trade over here. He is eventually going to be able to kill off that planetary, but ends up trading quite a few units in exchange. He gets some Banelings in on top of the Ghost, but the Ghost can tank those Banelings like champs. So he is an okay trade in the sense that DRG gets one of the bases, but I feel like it is going to be very quickly replaced here.
Yeah, dude, this is actually really just that there's always extra command centers with Spirit. I mean, if there's one guy who believes in the power of having endless mules and scans, it's Spirit. Like, it's actually crazy. He's building 7 SCVs right now at a time, making more planetaries, making more command centers. We've got building armor, high-sec auto tracking,
He's ready for the late game.
Yeah, this is like the upgrades people don't even normally think about getting. Spirit is going for at the 15-minute mark.
The base is going to get transfused once, but it does end up falling. Finally, Spirit claims his tax on that base, gets a nice little W there, and then is just going to try and boost off into the corner for safety at some point. But a nuke going down to another one of these bases. There's a lot of bases on the map. Is Dongre paying attention? He's not quite identified where that nuke is just yet.
Uh-oh. Oh,
pull the drone away.
Okay, just at the last moment. Perfectly calculated and timed.
He's going to get a lot of creep tumors at least. Might soften that up for a little bit later on. Finally, we're seeing the lurkers come into play, though. He saw a couple of those lurkers getting involved in the defense over in the top right, but a lurker den's been done for a while. He just hasn't had an opportunity to utilize them, and now that they're finally out, we see Liberator's actually able to deal with them quite well, but the attack comes in the left-hand side. Bane's going to be looking for more of those SCVs, but at the same time, we end up seeing that the Ghost and the rest of the army coming in from the right-hand side. He is going to be able to get a very nice cleanup. Spirit really pushing this army back.
Oh, gets all the lurkers on the right side as well. I mean, DRG right now is swinging as hard as he can, but he's just landing punches on the sponge that is Spirit. Every time you see Spirit lift the command center, pull the SCVs, pull back, and then guess what happens? You're chasing into layer upon layer of tanks and ghosts. And that's why we saw, was it 10,000 advantage in the resources lost? I mean, Terran's always a bit more efficient, but this has drastically changed from the early game.
It's 150% more resources lost almost for Dongrigu. And Dongrigu, he's doing a good job cleaning up the nukes. He's doing a good job trying to bat away some of the little harassment attempts over here, but he really hasn't found any big wins without big losses on his own side. Even these Lings going for another one of these run-bys, the lift up there from the orbital command has always been on point. He keeps that base alive. He gets there. He cleans up a lot of the army, and then he reestablishes himself.
DRG is running into the most quintessential European StarCraft style right now. Europeans are known as the players who love the late game. They love to defend, and they like to kind of, I don't want to commit everything to an attack. I'll poke for an advantage. I'll send a harassment. I'll do a bit of a push, but there's always a next step behind it, and that's exactly what Spirit's showing here is look at that Liberator range harass. So annoying. I don't think there's any Vipers on the map, so Hydras can't really deal with that very well.
It's going to be especially annoying. There are a couple of Vipers now out, so they just need to get in a position to help out against those Liberators. But, Pig, I mean, you were talking about just that slow and methodical style. Yes, Dongrigu has actually been taking a lot more bases, but you look at the bases that Dongrigu is being forced to take now, and you look at how close they are to Spirit. Spirit is no longer being offensive. He's killing those hatcheries. He's almost being defensive. He's able to effectively defend some of those left-hand bases while shutting down some of the newer bases for Dongrigu. I don't know how Dongrigu is going to be able to hold them.
Oh, I do like these attacks for the Overseers to spot the high ground. Can deny the command center to the bottom right, but revenge!
Oh, no.
Oh, that's really bad. That's so expensive. Lurkers are basically siege tanks. You cannot leave them out there unsupported. He's going to thrust through the middle to try and take advantage. A huge push up the guts. Will he find the opening? The Lings finding the tanks in the middle is actually very nice, and a good retreat on the right side. If he kept chasing on the right side, that would have gone very bad. DRG's got to do more of this. He's got to play off this. A single Zergling kills the tank. It's going to kill another tank. Gary, the hero Zergling.
Well done. Is going to be able to clean up at least a little bit. Now Spirit is going to be trying to fire back with some of these nukes. Dongrigu on top of it, but Dongrigu has already pulled back. Spirit is being given additional time to recreate any of the army units that he just lost. He's buying himself space to try and do some of his own counteroffensives as he actually gets a hatchery on the right-hand side and is probably going to be able to continue pushing on further because the entire army's on the left.
DRG, if he slows this down, he can just mine out these two middle bases. Losing that one on the right does suck, but he's already mining out the one on the left, and those are the most important bases. You can see his Spirit has not really found a way to push forward on the ground. It just drops, it's just libs. He hasn't started to move planetaries up, right? If we think of like really textbook late game, you want planetaries creeping forwards to get the high ground in the center, and then you branch out from there to control those two middle bases. And if Terran gets to mine those, I mean, it's ridiculously over. If Zerg gets to mine both of them, they have a shot at winning in the late game, especially if they can make a Broodlord Infestor transition, which is kind of the supreme late game style.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I will say I like that Spirit has still been able to shut down a lot of the mining at those bases now. Getting up these bottom right-hand bases has still been a bit of a struggle for Spirit. Dongrigu continues to find these opportunities to push on in over here. Is he going to be losing a lot on the retreat? He is getting that planetary at the cost of a lot of Lings, but those Lurkers going to be concaved in from behind. There's no escape over here for Dongrigu.
Yeah, that's a lot of units he's going to be losing. The planetary did go down to the bottom there, but those Lurkers are getting chased down. As long as he's got more scans, and he does a lovely spread on the Marauders. The Banelings try to come forward. The Vipers get sniped. The Overseers all pop the eyeballs out of their head like some sort of weird last dance move before they do say goodbye in this game. And remember, those Overseers, you don't think of them as combat units, but they're dying every fight, and they cost a lot of money to replace.
I mean, you look at the bank right now. Dongrigu used to have a larger mineral bank. He used to have also a larger gas bank, but now it's only the gas bank that's ahead right now for Dongrigu. His mineral bank, mostly gone. Spirit is actually up in supply right now as it continues to get additional damage. 19 workers killed between the drops and the Liberators. That planetary needs to really be up there. It's about to burn down, I think.
Oh, no, not like this. Not like this, Spirit. Come on, mate. 40 hit points, 40, 35.
It's going to go down. I mean, thankfully, Spirit has again been on point with getting more.
He saved it. He saved it. He noticed just before it got down to like 10 hit points there.
Calculated.
But he does save it. Oh, those Liberators have been such a nightmare for DRG in this game. That is, wow, okay, no, put that one away. Yeah, bad, Ghost, bad. Don't nuke your own army.
I love the idea that Dongragu is now just looking for the nuke for him to because you don't get any notification the nuke got canceled.
Yeah, that's the classic distraction nuke, you know, the age-old psychological warfare tactic is you drop a nuke in the corner of the map where nothing is, and your opponent's kind of spending the next minute going, where is it? Looking around their bases, unable to find it.
This is going to be a nice little snag over here as the Hydra's going to be able to get close enough to maybe get some damage on that orbital and finally snipe it off, but no. Going to go after those Liberators for now, getting those Lings and Banelings in on top of that Bioforce, but behind the wall in, it's going to be very difficult to push too much further forward. Love the use of the Lurkers, though. Really push Spirit back.
Gets one Lurker on the retreat, not too bad there. That's always it. You shove in, you overwhelm. The Terran is forced backwards, but you cannot waste time on quickly unburrowing and running, because the longer you sit kind of on the edge of range, the Ghosts, the tanks, the ranged Liberators, which by the way, Spirit is using exceptionally. I don't think I've seen anyone use ranged libs like him in the late game so well. But look at that. DRG catches you when you move forward on creep, grabs a bunch of units, can't chase too far though.
Is losing a lot of these Lurkers thanks to the snipes there from Spirit, so a little bit costly there on the retreat. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Pig, on this bottom left-hand base, that low ground base that Dongragu keeps trying to push into. It definitely is a nice positional area to try and hold, but is Spirit getting a lot of value out of that? It feels like Dongragu is committing quite a few resources to try and take that out repeatedly. Yeah,
it's the Zerg killing fields at this point, isn't it? Just constant attacks going in for a base that's almost completely mined out, and you've just got to, of course, remember the fact that Spirit's entrenched so much of this map, and the center control has been just so good. He's always got tanks spread through the middle. It's where his bio and ghosts are rallying out. He's keeping up the nuke harass. He gets this base snipe. Very important would be to click that, but does get overrun there. Nuke's going to land.
The Vipers are helping out this nuke. I think the hatchery is going to fall because of the Vipers as well. And a couple of snipes also going off, picking off a lot of these Hydras. Now the Bioforce is actually large enough to overwhelm and come in for the kill on that hatchery. And Spirit is looking to claim the center, Pig. And going back exactly to what you said, if Spirit can hold that base, I don't see the winning path for Dongragu.
Well, not at all. I mean, even if the Zerg mines both of those, if they're playing the way DRG has, it's still questionable whether they'll win just because the efficiency is so much higher for the Terran army. This is a huge issue if Spirit's able to hold this base. That is a big if. He doesn't have that many units. That being said, this is not a swarm. This is just a medium-sized Zerg army. The Hydras take massive tank shots.
The tank line has a lot of depth, so he's actually getting some great trade. Spirit, even though he's going to get cleaned up over here, I really do think he found some really favorable trades yet again, and he pushes up along the left-hand side. He's going to find one of the fresher bases here for DRG.
Yeah, that was an army that he wasn't really planning to push with, but he says, okay, you cracked my right side, I'll crack your left. Not only did they take out the middle base, they took out the one beyond it as well, and these are DRG's most important bases. Spirit has two fresh bases in the bottom right of this map that are just giving him so much income. His supply's a lot lower. He's out of bank. Spirit, I think, needs to pull back and just defend those bases for a moment, because as much damage as he's done to DRG, he's got to let that income work for him for a little while.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you look at the supplies and Spirit is down, but his army supply is still very high up there. He's still got the advantage of all of these orbital commands dropping down those mules. It's mostly worker supply, and Dongragu is not actually mining effectively with most of those workers. So I think that if you're right, if Spirit can continue to just hold on to these bottom right-hand bases, there's a chance, but oh man, Dongragu finding a lot of these units and finding the planetary.
This is huge. Those Ling run bys in the middle, buying him time. He gets another planetary down. Nuke harass going in on about a 50 idle drones, but he's lost base in the bottom right, has Spirit. And honestly, there's a lot going on right now. DRG may miss that nuke.
I'm still not seeing any reaction. The nuke is going to be plopping on down. Juicy 29 workers killed. A beautiful nuke there. And it's going to definitely soften up Dongragu's worker supply, but I mean, he still needs to be able to just keep this army alive. This is a critical army that Dongragu cannot afford to replace anymore, and he's losing his workers.
A lot of units going down there. DRG's got to get out of that position, and look at that. That planetary clearing up the extractors, not something you see every day.
No, but you know, every little bit is going to help out, especially with the gas count. I think Spirit has been hurting for a while, and we do see that ghost finally getting cleaned on up. The big nuke ghost as well. But that bottom right-hand area, here's again, like the problem here, Pig, is that even though the bottom right-hand bases get cleaned up, Spirit still has those available. And yeah, I love that Dongargoo is going to be able to assault this base, is going to be able to take this out. But at the end of the day, there's no way for Dongargoo to actually take the bottom right-hand bases. Eventually, Spirit will be able to mine from them.
Yeah, I mean, DRG will be retaking the base on the left. He doesn't have a lot of income. He's been kind of out-positioning Spirit, but it's off the back of, you know, so many waves of attacks that have obviously drained his bank, and he doesn't have the ability to rebuild. This is basically a pack of lurkers and not much behind it. And look at that. The lurkers are falling. The tanks, the marauders spread out there, doing pretty well against all of that. And even though there's 3 lurkers still left being a nuisance, a big army on that right side is going to withdraw, start to pull back, and DRG's income, it can't look good. I'd love to see the income tab at this point. I mean, we see the red dots down the bottom, which do indicate he's behind a lot. But oh man, that paints an entirely different picture.
Yeah, absolutely does. Now, Spirit is actually mostly gas-starved right now. He's got a good mineral bank, and he's been trying to pump out as many Marines as possible, but he's got such a ghost-heavy army to help deal with all these lurkers that have been popping on out, that he really is light on the gas. So if he can establish another one of these bases, then take the gas geysers, I think that's going to be a big boon for Spirit. But man, he is already still looking so good. You just look at the army supply, and you know both of these players are in an awkward economic situation. Dongargoo is going to have the worst end of it with just a lower army supply and units he cannot afford to lose right now.
Nice supply lead there. I love that Spirit's still rebuilding the SCVs, realizing that there is enough minerals to mine to justify this. And it suits his style as to just rebuild and take his time with it. And DRG is the one, of course, who's, oh no, his only important base, losing drones, the hatchery taking a lot of damage, and saving all the units for now. Spirit, it's really, I think he realizes right now he's kind of got his foot on top of DRG's economy. He's not going to be letting up the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Dongargoo is not able to get up another one of these bases, he is still in a world of trouble right now because, again, he just does not have anything close to the mining that Spirit does. You can see the income advantage heavily leaning in favor of Spirit, and Dongargoo taking that left-hand center base yet again, but you can also see that immediately Spirit spots that out with one of these Marines, and you can be guaranteed that he's going to be sending some more units over there as soon as he has an opportunity to.
Yeah, another big old lurker attack. The planetary doing some damage, clearing out some Zerglings and the like, but the SCVs repairing that is a little questionable. That being said, ghosts come in from behind the lurkers, try to get out of there, but a lot of them get sniped down on the way out.
Yeah, I mean, I like that Dongargoo at least had the consciousness to pull out there because he knew the rest of the army was going to be coming. He knew that he had a timer, but even just losing a couple of those lurkers was going to be a little bit tough. Now we're starting to see the Ling run by on this left-hand side, finding a handful of these SCVs, picking off the sensor tower. I like picking up the sensor tower because that is going to open up the way for these Lings to just pull the army over to the left-hand side again, and maybe give it an opportunity to kill off those right bases one more time.
Spirit is not going to give up, though, in terms of looking to take the middle bases. It's killer command center, cool. I mean, against most Terran players, I'm used to this being so annoying. And it's not the mineral cost of the command center, it's the time. Because you're like, oh, I've got to start another one from scratch. It's going to take 70 seconds, then I've got to lift it off and put it there. And you've got to morph it into a planetary, and it's minutes before you get that base established again. And Spirit, it's like, oh, no, I always have insurance. I've always got 3 more command centers behind it. You cannot overwhelm me unless you crack me down earlier in this game, and the power of the macro overwhelming style there, looking very satisfied. That game went exactly the way you wanted.
Slow and methodical, like you were talking about, Pig, not being overeager. A lot of this presence from Spirit you kept mentioning, it was just the harassment, it was the drops, it was not the ground pushes nearly as much, and he did a great job continuing to find even just little bits and pieces of damage, but the stalwart defense against the repeated run-bys and multi-prong aggression from Dongargoo is really what solidified that for Spirit.
It's always so hard there, you know, how do you crack that armor of a Terran who is so happy to just sit back behind his defensive lines, because you want lots of Banelings and Lurkers to beat the Bio and the Ghosts. But if you're running banelings and lurkers into spread out siege tanks and planetaries, it's like, oh, this is so inefficient. You really want zerglings to get on the tanks. You want the lurkers and the banelings to hit the bio units. Spirit showed that if he's just got that nice spread, always willing as well to just lift a command center and give up ground. I think the worst thing you can do as a Terran player there is gather your whole army and be like, oh, I've got to get my whole army on his. Because then the lurkers can just jump on top. If they burrow on your army, the splash damage gets out of control.
Yeah, I just love that Spirit was willing, like you're saying, to cut some of his losses there and say like, yeah, okay, I'm going to take some losses here, but I will be able to push you back. And if you overstay even just a couple of seconds too long, I'm going to be able to find some additional punishment to throw at you. I'm going to be able to find a couple of little advantages, and I'm going to stay alive and be able to reestablish us in a little bit. It's being able to have that maturity to say like, yeah, I don't have to defend every single one of the bases 100% of the way 100% of the time.
It's awesome. We're kind of getting a little sneaky peek as well at these other players who are competing in this round right now. Looks like Stray is in a big macro game. I think I just saw 26 gateways on one screen. So
that, I mean, love watching Astrea when he gets into his macro mode. Is quite enjoyable. There's a lot of actually other series going on. If you guys are interested, we got, I think, 4 streams going on with games all from this wonderful play-in stage. ESL SC2, ESL SC2B, ESL SC2C, and then Root Cats, because Cats loves to be different.
Yeah, that's always the agreement. He says, you know, just let me do it on my own channel. Have a bit of fun there, and always got some insightful commentary over there. So can't wait to see how that one unravels. Looks like some players giving each other advice as well, checking it out. And it's so great to see this tournament, man. I'm so happy to see the players coming back together. There's been a real energy about the place where it's all smiles as the players run into each other, whether it be at the hotel or in the practice area. The ping pong tables have been a big point of contention between them.
Yeah.
And of course, we are continuing this Terran versus Zerg series. And the question right now seems to be, how do you turn this around as the Korean aggressive mid-game player? Because you don't want to play a game like that again.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's exactly the question I was going to ask you is, do you want to see Dongrigu, because you made a minor mention of this, like, do you want to see Dongrigu just try not to take it to the late game to be even more aggressive with his build order choices or his options to try and get in Spirit's face and shut things down in the earlier or mid-game stages?
I definitely would like to see it, and I'll give you a whole rundown of what I would love to see DRG do. But right now he's got a Polish, powerful, absolute monster in front of him. This man here in the bottom right representing Kaizi Gaming. It is Spirit.
And this man up here in the top left-hand side of the map from Team Envy is no stranger to making things happen when he's coming back from behind. His name is Dongrigu. Just that amount of experience behind him. I mean, I feel like these are the kind of moments where that experience really comes into effect. When you know someone has been a tournament winner, they've made all of the runs to the top. They have so much knowledge of how to relax yourself in this competitive environment. It's the first offline event in a very long time for a lot of these players, but those GSL players have been playing these offline events in the GSL for a while. And this is that moment where you can say, like, all of that culminates into Dongrigu not being one of those players that should be tilted or worried or anxious coming in 1-0 down.
Absolutely. He's got that experience, and I don't think he will be. I think he's thinking all about how he can solve it. And remember, last game started out very well for DRG. He slapped down the push on the left side of the map that came up with a great big Ling flank, just surrounded the tanks in the bio, shut it down. He was in a good spot. But what happened, remember, DRG was playing a Massling Bane style. Now, he went lurkers, but that was a delayed lurker transition. He did want to kill Spirit earlier and stop him getting that ridiculously fast 4th command center, the 2nd factory, the double upgrades. Spirit is a guy who's very willing to cut a bit of production on his barracks, to not have early Widow Mines and tanks in super large numbers, because he just wants the bases, wants the upgrades, wants the big setup. So I think in that scenario, the real banger, the thing that kind of got under DRG's skin and made him miss his timing was just the drops. Spirit came in, picked up, moved around, dropped up, the Zergans are there, picked up, moved around. He got that spawning pool snipe, which was obviously crucial as well, stopped the reinforce. Lurker Den, of course, much later in the game as well. But I think there was this moment there where it was like, where were the queens? Because those medevacs were leading them around. And I think what happened is because there was multi-prong drops, I think DRG had all of his queens on one control group. And this is something which Rogue was the first player, I believe, who revolutionized like a Massling Bane style many years ago. And he would always have his 2 groups of queens out on the map, one on one side, one on the other. So because he realized, look, if you've got nothing that shoots up except queens, Terrans can be so annoying with their drops. They will just lead you around in circles. So I think if he plays the same style, if DRG can just split his queens up on 2 different kind of mobile groups, it's not going to give Spirit the ability to just fly around and lead him around on a chase. And if that didn't happen, I think there was about a 58 army, maybe 40 army supply lead. You crash in there, upgrade lead as well. You're going to overwhelm him as he takes his 4th base. He's not getting that 4th base up for free.
Yeah, I actually, that totally makes sense, and I'm really interested now to see how Dongergu is going to try and adapt, because I think some of the stuff that you're talking about, it makes a lot of sense, but I know it's not one of those things that's super easy to just say, well, let me just change the way my hotkey groups work, middle of the game, or the middle of the series and everything. So it's going to be very fascinating to see how Dongergu is going to try and make those adjustments to try and deal with whatever Spirit throws at him in Game 2.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? Because it's like what Raynor brought last year to win the World Championship was just queens on 2 different groups, just because people were so good at multi-pronging with Hellions and Libs and all this sort of stuff and Banshees. And he said, no, like, you just got to have 2 squads. You know, I've been practicing versus 6 people playing in Archon mode at once. Like, you got to do this. And I mean, obviously that's more of an early game harassment thing, but definitely it's kind of interesting to see, you know, the evolution over the years where you see these young players as well. They're so fluid at kind of swapping how they're using their units and what the control groups are for and that sort of stuff. And DRG is definitely an older player, and I'm always just so amazed that he plays so well in this time, because he's not just a player who came back from the military. He's much older than a lot of these players. You know, he's into his 30s, well into his 30s at this point, and it's cool to see him still just banging around with these young guns. And
especially, like, Dongergu is one of the players that picks fast styles. He doesn't opt for some of the, I mean, I think most of the styles in Zerg matchups are a little bit faster, but he doesn't opt for the slower styles. He opts for the faster styles, even sometimes when it's not necessarily the most meta thing.
The Zergling was always his favorite unit for a reason, you know, the cute DRG Zerglings running around and tearing people's economy apart. It's going to be a pretty similar opening so far for DRG. The difference is he's gone for a much quicker lair and Baneling Nest, and you'll notice he's already adding a lot of gases. This to me speaks of Baneling speed and Mutalisks most likely coming out, maybe not, but he doesn't have those super fast upgrades, so he's not going to have the same ability to say, oh, you know, 200 supply Massling Bane with 2/2, let's go. Those moments won't be there. He could do it with 1/1 upgrades potentially, but the fact the Evo Chambers still haven't gone down definitely speaks to his intentions of building a quick Spire and going back to those Mutalisks.
Yeah, I want to even bring it back to something else you had mentioned in game number 1, where that Reaper from Spirit in game number 1 got so much scouting information, continuing to stick around in that main base. Not quite the same in this game. Now, the Banshee is going to be one of the primary ways that Spirit can kind of get a little bit more information, but it pokes into the natural, pulls all the way back as it waits for the second Banshee to arrive. So again, Spirit is one of those players that really does like to be a bit more passive with his Hellions and Banshees. He's not the hyper-committed kind of player who'll just dive in on a moment's notice.
And he's actually got, I think, double eBay off the 3cc before adding any extra barracks. So it's the 4 barracks kind of at once, like you were talking about in the last game. And that's going to lead to him having a potential 2/2, like 3 base all in almost, or even 4 base just parade. And against the guy who's delaying his evos as much as DRG, if you can block the mutas from doing damage, like, that's going to be huge. And DRG, he's distracted by the Banshees, a little slow to put that Spire down.
Yeah, just a few extra seconds is going to buy Spirit a few extra seconds. Now, the Banshee in number 1 does lose its energy for Cloak, is not going to get sniped off thanks to the creep not quite being all that far forward inside the main base. So Spirit can pull back, potentially repair that up, and also spots out the location for another one of these bases coming on up. A very quick 5th base, it feels like.
Yeah, I like the 4th and the 5th there for DRG, because he's going to be playing such a mobile style, expanding to opposite sides of the map. He can always give up one of those and just transfer the drones to the other side. A very big economy as well for DRG this early. He's going to go for a surround on the Hellions. Gets a couple. No, he has to pull back. Too many of them slipped out of the surround. Would have been too costly. Yeah,
good position on those Queens. Going to be able to save those Banelings that didn't quite have the Baneling speed upgrade. Spirit gonna have some of those Sea Chanks getting set on up, but he's already loading up some of those drops. He's gonna pair them with the Hellions. He's gonna try and continue to put on that multi-prong harassment as he's got 1/1 upgrades finishing up. Spire, not quite done yet. The Muta's still gonna take another 30, 40 seconds to actually get out, congregate together, and help push things back. And in the meanwhile, Spirit's gonna try and take advantage of that timing as much as possible.
Yeah, a little wary of going so deep on creep though, and with good reason. The Aliens and Marines going to back off. 15 Mutalisks at once, man.
Wow.
That is just crazy. Of course, 2-2 upgrades need to get started for Spirit. His armory has finished. He does start +2 attack. 1-1 has not even begun for DRG, but the Muta count is big, and I think if Spirit realizes this, he'd probably maybe back up a little bit. He's got to be very careful.
The Mutas are moving up toward the north base, and are they actually going to try and swing around? There are some Lings that are moving in behind. Is he going to go for the counterattack or go in for the surround? He's pulling his units in. He's going to try and hit these army units from behind. The Siege Tank actually did get a shot off on those Lings, so I think Spirit should know about that flank coming in. Is he going to be able to react to it?
Queen's tanking up front. They do take a lot of the shells from those Siege Tanks. Lings come in from behind, but the Hellbats just burn him up. The Hellbats so effective. The tanks took out a lot of the Banelings. The Hellbats burnt the Zerglings. Spirit holds onto this position, and DRG, even though he's got a good Muta count, he's so behind on these upgrades, and it's very scary to fight those Marines head to head.
There's just no Banelings either. He already used all the Banelings he had available at this base and has almost no chance of surviving. And this base, the other base that he took, is going to actually have all potential mining shut down by just the Banshees that have been continuing to harass. And as that is all happening, Spirit moves in toward the third base. Mutas get pulled over toward the main base, so they do manage to take out a medevac, but that just means that this location has no need to worry about those Mutas for a little bit.
Oh, he is, of course, spreading himself deep on creepers. Spirit, he's got to be careful because these Mutas could counterattack across the map very hard. That being said, it looks great for Spirit right now. The Mutas need an incredible fight. DRG needs to get a big win right now. He goes around, looks for the Siege Tanks on the rear. Baneling's going after the Marines. The tanks go down to the Mutas. But look at that. The Mutas are surrounded by Marines.
It is not even close. It's not going to work at all. The Mutas now have to fight against the Marines that have 1-1 upgrades. They gradually have to back off. Right now, Dongargoo is only mining off of 2 bases effectively as we finally start to see that Dongargoo just has to pull back. He has to abandon that base. And Spirit is here with another round of units and +2 weapons getting up now before +1 armor finishes. Spirit takes the 2